So, I think what we'll do is I'll ask a couple of general questions to our panel, and then we'll open it up to the floor. We'll have a roving microphone, and we'll get some questions and comments in, if that's okay. Yeah, I'll get that off you now in a moment. So, panel, your initial observations, stroke comments on the short survey that you've just seen. Paul, do you want to kick off?
I would say I actually filled out the survey myself, so I thought it was pretty consistent with the perspective I had from my microcosm as well, so no major surprises there.
Okay.
I guess what I would say is we've had a lot of focus on the millennial concept today and how to keep them engaged. And I'll come back to the millennial thing later on, but I would argue probably that, you know, who doesn't want to feel a sense of purpose at work? Who doesn't want to feel that they're developing and growing in their professional capability? And who doesn't want to make a bucket load of cash along the way? So those top three things were what came out here in the survey, and they're the top three things that come out when we talk about keeping millennials retained as well. So I would argue we're all millennials in that sense. We all have a common set of goals and objectives. And I think we're probably doing a disservice to millennials when we try to segment them and say, well, now they're different than we are. I don't think that's the case at all.
Okay, thank you for that. Margaret?
I suppose the findings, I also did the survey myself, answered it as honestly as I could, with as much information and background as I could. But our findings are very similar to results from IBEC are having a HR event today. The results are exactly in line, and I think for Ireland as a whole, when we're in almost full employment, the biggest thing is getting good people and retaining them. Then secondly, you know, is a challenge. But I find for us, our HQ is actually based in Kilkenny. We've taken on 130 people this year so far. So in terms of, I think I completed something like a 13%, you know, within year one that people would leave us. I don't think that's bad, really, given the number of staff that we've actually taken on. So I think it's just very, very hard to get the right people at the moment. And you have that whole, I suppose the Generation Zs, they're wanting to move on, but like they're also wanting to travel internationally as well, to get experience, you know, abroad. So, you know, what we've done in Transformate is we offer, you know, visas to keep good people and to keep those guys that are, you know, under the age of 25, to keep them engaged, to keep them interested. If they're really good in sales, send them to San Francisco, or we're lucky enough to have offices in those destinations. But I don't see any big surprises. But I just think it's in line with just, I suppose, the current climate at the moment.
Okay, Ronnie?
I think that the survey is very much in line with what we're experiencing in Microsoft as well, and what I've seen in other organizations I've worked with. It's only going to go in one direction. As a non-millennial, unfortunately, I tend to see that we struggle with the progress that's needed and the time frames around it from the millennials and the Generation Zs that are working in our organization. And it's breaking some of our systems that we have around, you know, when should promotions happen, you know, when should we look at salary increases. Where in, you know, old worlds, maybe even 5 years ago, you were looking at 12, 24-month time frames. That's getting squeezed down to 6. You know, you're promoting somebody and 6 months later they're going, I'm ready for my next promotion. And, you know, it kind of breaks the models that we have, and even the more dot-com-ish companies that we work in. So that pace is increasing all the time, and the expectations of the people. And it's even more enhanced, I think, by probably the amount of multinational folk we have in Dublin, in that they tend to be here for a committed time frame, maybe 2, maybe 3 years max, and they want to get as far as they can within that time frame as well. And we can't fight that. It is what it is. We have to adapt, and as I said, it's putting pressure back on some of the assumed and the more traditional systems that we have for those processes.
Okay, so Paul, if I can come back to you there, one of the key things you mentioned there was sense of purpose. Mm-hmm. So what are the kind of things you guys are doing at LinkedIn to try and increase the pace of which that might happen for an employee?
Well, there's a couple of different ways we approach that. One is within the realm of our professional objectives and our own mission as a company, and so we try to tie that back down to our individual contributions, right? So like all companies, we have highfalutin goals, right? And if you're not careful, they can become a little bit too esoteric, a little bit too philosophical in nature. So the goal is, what we try to do is we try to play that back down into what does that mean for you. So if you look at our talent solutions business, of which I am not a part, a number of my colleagues in the talent solutions business tie it back to the numbers of lives changed, right? So the goal for LinkedIn as a whole, the vision is to create economic opportunity for the world's global workforce. That's about 3 billion people, okay? So if I'm a sales professional sitting at my desk selling recruitment solution tools to my clients, how can I have an impact on 3 billion people? And so a number of my colleagues in the organization literally track the numbers of lives changed. How do they do that? They can measure the number of jobs offered and accepted via our platform, narrowed down to the scope of the client base that our sales professional is working with. And then we can say to that sales professional, in the year gone by, you've changed this many people's lives, because without you having facilitated that employer on the LinkedIn platform, would they have hired that person? You tie that back. In my world, where I work in the sales solutions business, so many of you, I see a lot of clients of sales solutions around here. That's essentially the sales navigator tool and moving your organization to a modern selling platform. And I use some maths, you might say dodgy maths sometimes, but I use some maths to play it back to help my organization understand how many cold calls they've taken out of the system on an annual basis. So I can say, we've empowered this many organizations with this many licenses. They have that many salespeople. Let's make some assumptions. If they were doing this many cold calls last year, and through the use of our platform, we've managed to dial down the number of cold calls. This is a number. That's the number of cold calls we have taken out of the system, which is good for the seller who doesn't like making cold calls, and it's damn good for the buyer who hates to receive them. And so you bring it back down to something quantifiable, something measurable, and something you can almost touch. So that's within the realm of our professional environment. Then beyond that, again, like a lot of companies here in this room, we spend a significant portion of our time trying to do good in the community, be it painting underprivileged schools, cleaning the canal. One thing that is core to our business is we bring in job seekers, and we have volunteers within LinkedIn who will help those job seekers improve their LinkedIn profiles on a voluntary basis.
Great.
So that's core to our business as well.
If I can bolt a piece on for you, Ronnie, like the scale of the operation out there obviously comes into play again, and employee engagement scores very highly in all the questions. So from an employee engagement perspective, and maybe a little bit of sense of purpose, how do you go about that out in Microsoft?
It's a great question. It's what was going through my mind as the other panelists were talking. We've got a very enigmatic CEO in Satya Nadella, and we've got a great mission statement to help every person on the planet achieve more. And we can relate that to what our people do day to day. Examples would be, we've got an IoT tagging system for rhinos in South Africa that we're working on from Dublin. A lot of fulfillment, even simple things like helping companies automate processes and stuff. So you can do that. I think where the challenge is at scale, and we've gone from 0 to 800 in 18 months, 2 years, is how you take that purpose and that sense of purpose and how you translate down through the management layers that it lands with the individuals on the ground, right? This is really important, and I love the Stuart's analogy of the symphonic C-suite, and then coming on to Aidan's point of look at yourself in the mirror when you come out of those C-suite meetings and how have we done, and sometimes it feels like a load of 10-year-olds with a load of tin cans, to be quite honest. It's a long way from the symphonic C-suite. So again, how good are we at taking what we have all the toolkit there, the mission statement, the purpose, the culture of the company, but then as a management team in a high growth organization at scale, how good are we at bringing that down to ground?